Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and we have a special guest today. She is the owner of Mango's Dog Boarding and Whoa, Nellie. So welcome, Sam, to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do, who you are.
Sure. So I am a certified professional dog trainer, and I have a background as a veterinary technician. So I've been working with dogs since I was starting as a kennel assistant in high school, and that's been over 10 years ago. Like you mentioned, I'm also the owner of Mango's Dog Boarding and Whoa, Nellie Positive Canine Training here in Jacksonville, Florida.
So let's talk about Mango's Dog Boarding. So what services do you offer over at Mango's?
We offer overnight boarding with or without dog play. So we have something for every dog out there. We also offer a few additional services such as added on training, field trips to different dog-friendly places, baths because your dog is going to get dirty when they're with us, and nail trims. At Mango's, we have 2 acres of fully fenced yard that the dogs get to play and run in, and we have an indoor dog room, so it's fully climate controlled, and I have cameras so I can see what the dogs are doing all day long.
So you said that the setup, you have indoor and outdoor. Is that just for people who have been boarding their dogs, or do you ever do any type of like playtime where you can like come and do group play if you're not boarding your dogs?
Yeah, so for current clients, I do offer kind of a day camp situation. So if I have dogs who need to come get some extra energy out or want to work on some specific training tasks, then we can come over for the day. But it is for current clients. So the dogs will have to have stayed with me before so I can get to know their personalities and make sure that they're a good fit for the other dogs I have there.
And do you do any type of like assessment when the dog comes in? And so basically if someone calls you, do you need to meet with the dog before they board with you, or do you just kind of ask them questions before they come in?
It depends on the dog and it depends on the owner. Oftentimes as I'm asking questions, it gives me a good idea of what the dog is like. So if there's anything in that conversation that makes me think maybe we need to do a meet and greet first so your dog gets more comfortable knowing who I am and seeing our yard first, then we can do that. Oftentimes, though, I have young dogs who are just happy-go-lucky kind of personalities, so they typically do fine. Or any dogs who are already a daycare dog or have been in boarding situations and they've done okay, those dogs typically don't need that first kind of initial meet and greet.
Okay. And so kind of to piggyback off of that, is it okay if someone has a reactive dog, or if they tell you, hey, my dog doesn't do well with others, can they still come board with you?
Sure. Yeah. So that one is one that it really depends on the dog. Most dogs I would say yes to. However, I don't take dogs who do have a bite history. So if a dog has ever bit a person or another dog, that is just my line in the sand. But if your dog is just kind of reactive on leash or doesn't want to play with other dogs, typically we can make it work just fine because each dog has their own space and they have me. So if they don't like playing with other dogs, they can play with me throughout the day.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. I feel like I should come be like a part-time employee.
It is fun. I really enjoy it.
So you said that the dogs kind of have like their own setup. What if you have a little family of dogs, like 2 or 3? Are they able to stay together?
They can. It's at owner discretion. So I always if I have multiple dogs, I always ask the owner, would you like them to stay together or would you like them to stay in separate kennels? Most often the dogs stay in separate kennels just to give them their own little bit of space away from each other. But occasionally I do have dogs who are really bonded who want to be together. So they get their own kennel with enough space to have their own sides.
Mm-hmm. And should anyone, or does anyone bring anything like their own food, their own toys, their own beds? Is there anything you recommend or anything you tell people, please don't bring that here?
Sure. So I do have a full list that's on my website. But typically I kind of tell people bring enough food for your dog's stay. if for some reason I run out of food or they run out of food or you forget to bring it, I do have food that I can offer. And then I also tell people, bring something that you're comfortable with them in their kennel, whether that's a blanket or a bed, or if maybe it's just like a chew bone that they like from home. If your dog is a destroyer of beds, leave the bed at home. If you don't trust them with something, do not bring it. If it's something you truly love and are going to be sad when it comes home dirty or torn up, leave it at home.
Yeah, that makes sense. Our dogs are a little bit toy reactive, so I feel like if they ever came to be boarded, they would not bring any of their stuff with them.
Which is smart. If you know that about your dog, just bring what you think is appropriate, leave what else at home.
And how many times a day do the dogs get out to play?
So for play groups, we typically do 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 groups. It also depends on how many dogs I have there, what the weather's doing for us throughout the day. But they definitely get out first thing in the morning, last thing at night, and then a couple times throughout the day, plus a few additional potty breaks outside of just the playtime.
And then what are some shots or vaccines that you require or recommend for boarding dogs?
Sure. So ultimately, it's up to you and your veterinarian to decide what's best for your dog. But I do require rabies and distemper parvo, whether it's a vaccination up to date or a current titer that shows that they are covered. I do recommend Bordetella just because they're in a group setting. However, not every dog needs that. Not every owner wants to give that. So again, it's kind of a conversation between your vet and you, and then making sure we're legal as far as rabies goes.
Okay. And then you mentioned some additional services. So with respect to grooming, I don't want to call it grooming per se, but baths, nail trims, what all do you offer and how does that work with the boarding? Is it like an add-on package?
Yeah, so everything's additional depending what you want because every dog's a little different, every owner's a little different. I do offer go-home baths, so it's pretty much a simple bath. It's get your dog clean because they're going to get dirty and they're going to be playing and stinky. So it's nothing like you're going to get from a groomer. I'm not going to blow out your dog, brush them, trim them, or anything like that because I'm not a dog groomer and you don't want me putting any sort of scissors or clippers near your dog. And then as far as nail trims go, I enjoy doing nail trims. Often dogs don't like having their nails trimmed, so I can spend a few extra minutes training your dog as well if it's something that we need to do.
Okay. So let's actually segue into training. So you do have the Whoa Nellie training. And so what style of training do you follow?
So I'm a reinforcement-based trainer. That means I focus on rewarding the dog for the things that I like and making sure that they're set up in an environment that's going to make them successful. And if I'm seeing anything that I don't really like from them, I'm going to either just interrupt or redirect the behavior and guide them into what's more appropriate. If you know Susan Garrett, I just closely mirror what she teaches. She is one of my dog training go-tos, so I try to follow all of her protocols for things, and I tend to have a lot of success with that. As far as training as well, I don't use anything like e-collars, shock collars, or prong collars in any of my dogs, which is a common question I get with boarding. So just know that's not something I use. And then as far as training goes as well, I always, look for making it fun for the dog because it's really important that your dog enjoys training and we figure out what works for them because there's not a one size fits all for everybody.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And is all of the training at your facility or do you ever go to people's houses for training?
So previously I used to do private lessons, but I found that a lot of people wanted a place to board their dog and get some of that extra reinforcement time in with training. So currently I'm not offering any private lessons, but I do have a network of other trainers that I send people to if somebody's looking for that.
And then with respect to training, how often do you normally train the dogs or how often do you recommend that they at least meet with their trainer?
So if I'm working with a dog at my house and they're there for boarding, we're taking whatever we're working on and breaking it down into a few short sessions throughout the day, just to kind of get a constant flow. It's not like I'm going to work with your dog for an hour because at that point your dog is just going to be toast. But we want it to be fairly consistent. We want it to be short. We want it to be fun. We want the dog to win a whole lot. So when they're with me, it's very consistent throughout the day. If you're working with like a private trainer, it's really a situational thing. So some, especially puppies, you want to meet about once a week or so because things are always changing or there's something new we can add. Other things you're looking at meeting every couple weeks or just being in touch throughout a month or so.
Are you, would you be open to if someone was already working with the trainer and they came to board their dog with you, if you were like, hey, my dog's working on sit, down, and stay. Is that okay to kind of leave you with like instructions and maybe have you add on to those, or maybe report back on how those are going?
Yes, exactly. That's what I like to offer for clients, because I know it's hard to get all the work in, especially when we're busy throughout our days with other things. So it's no problem if you're working with another trainer. You just tell me what you need done. You tell me what your dog's verbal cues are, what their hand signals are, and then I'll go through and reinforce those for you as best I can.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome, because we run out of time in our schedule. I know we're supposed to do all of our training a couple times a day. Kind of like you said, don't crunch it into an hour. The dog is going to lose focus. They're going to get bored. They start to hate it. But we do 10, 15 minutes and then, we maybe don't revisit it again until the next day.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome. So any homework for clients, or maybe just tips for people in general who are working on training their dog?
So that's a great thing. So it's going to depend on what your dog is doing. But kind of my two biggest pieces of advice, you've got to set realistic goals. So if you have a young puppy, don't treat them like an 8-year-old dog who's going to know everything. If you have an older dog, know your progress might be a bit slower. So just make sure that you're really looking at what your dog is capable of and what you're capable of, and set goals around that, and know you can always build on them. Don't reach too far too fast. And then make sure you're having fun with your dog in training, because if it's a chore or your dog's not enjoying or you're not enjoying, it's not going to get done. So like I said, break it up, make it fun, play games, enjoy it, and then you'll be successful.
Yeah. So tell everyone where they can find you. Tell everyone your social media handles and your website.
So I'm on Instagram. You can follow me at Mango's Dog Boarding or Whoa Nellie Canine Training. And then my website is mangosdogboarding.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.